While it's early days yet, the idea put forward by Transfield Proprietary Limited would be to construct huge steel and concrete tubular sections. The ends could be temporarily welded shut and the modules, 80 metres long and weighing up to 30,000 tonnes, would be launched down the slipway and then towed to Sydney. Once there, they'd be flooded at a controlled rate, lowered to the dredged harbour bottom and positioned by cranes. However, the idea of building the sections in Newcastle is one of a number of options open to Transfield, and Dockyard management says it's too early yet to raise people's expectations. There's no denying the logic of the scheme, but the problem for Newcastle is that modules such as these could just as easily be built in Botany Bay, for instance. And remember, we're talking about sections that weigh upwards of 20 or 30,000 tonnes apiece, so the handling of them over a large distance could turn out to be a huge economic factor. Even so, the approach from Transfield indicates the Dockyard facility is known and talked about outside Newcastle, and that can only augur well for our prospects in chasing work in the big Navy submarine replacement project.
Students from 34 schools from throughout the region turned out to watch the display. The Koalas treated the audience to a parade where they demonstrated their new routine parade of flags and a selection of their concert favourites. The sunny conditions were perfect for the band members and the performance was heartily appreciated by the audience. The display raised $1,000 for the charity Stuart House, plus a further $2,000 which will help finance a bicentennial visit to the United Kingdom by the marching Koalas next year.
Some ribbons! Some ribbons here! A bunch tonight. Watch this carefully. Oh, look what's here. Richard. Oh, Richard. The white budgie! Richard
Hubert
the
the
white
super
budgie.
magician is best known to viewers for his regular appearances on The Big Dog Show. But there's another side to his act. He's been in the magic business for the past 24 years, the last 7 touring the clubs around the country.
What makes a good magician?
A lot of hard work. Yeah, a lot of practice. My goodness, a lot of practice. And you can only get good by practice.
What's the hardest part?
Presentation, I'd say. Sometimes the tricks can be easy to do, but you can't just go and do a trick, you've got to present it. And the key thing is you've got to entertain people. Got to entertain them.
So would you say that's your secret to success?
Yeah, I suppose I'm an entertainer first and a magician second, because I use my magic as my vehicle to entertain people in my own way.
It has been shown that children can contract Ray's syndrome from having aspirin to reduce a fever, and there are these days that you're better off giving children an alternative to aspirin for any fever that they may have.
Ray's syndrome was first isolated by an Australian pathologist over 20 years ago, when it was noted that children treated with aspirin for ailments such as colds, flu and chickenpox developed acute liver and brain damage. Many Newcastle pharmacists do not stock the junior aspirin anymore, and those that do say the demand for it has dropped dramatically over the past few years. All drugs are subject to classification as to where and how they may be sold. Aspirin, junior aspirin and other brands containing the drug are classed as exempt from any regulations, which means that they can also be sold in supermarkets as well as pharmacies.
There's quite a few packs of different manufacturers' packs of aspirin which they can buy freely at the supermarket, which show doses for small children, and mums can easily give their children more than the 4-hourly dose of aspirin recommended on those packets.
Does it surprise you to learn that these junior aspirin have been banned in England?
Not at this moment. We have had an article shown to us which shows that aspirin is linked to Ray's syndrome. But for many years, a lot of the Newcastle pharmacists have not been selling children's strength aspirin because of the fact that it has other problems as well. That is, the children can easily get an overdosage, as I just mentioned earlier, and that aspirin can also cause gut problems with children.
However, until pharmacists and shopkeepers, not only in Newcastle but around the country, receive a directive from the Drug Evaluation Board regarding the drug, all brands of aspirin will continue to be freely available.
The more than 100 delegates attending the conference today were exposed to some disturbing facts. 75% of all applicants for crisis housing are women. There is no agency in the Hunter region which specifically accommodates women who are homeless because of drug and alcohol problems, and at the present time more than 900 people are listed on the books of the Newmac Community Tenancy Program, with only a handful of vacancies occurring each month. According to Chairperson Terrace the conference today was called to deal with these and the many other problems which women face when seeking accommodation.
The main problem for everyone looking for accommodation in this area, if they're low income or disadvantaged, is that there isn't enough supply. And to gain access to what is available if you're low income or disadvantaged is near impossible because of competition.
And how are you going to ensure that today's conference isn't just a lot of talk and that action will be taken?
At the end of today we have two segments, small group workshops and a plenary session, wherein we hope to identify fairly succinctly all the issues and the gaps in services that exist and form a working party which will act as a lobby group to achieve better resourcing for women and housing in the Hunter.
Says this is a pretty unusual spot for a training camp for champion boxers, I would say.
Well, actually, you use the correct term there, Lee, when you said training camp, because these boys are the only boxers in Australia who've got their own training camp. Now, in America, they've got to go to training camps. These fellas have got it here. Got all the fresh air, no carbon monoxide poisoning like they have in the city. And I reckon training up here is worth 3 rounds when it comes to a boxing match.
Right.
Yep.
Says you're not exactly a local boy. Where's the accent hail from?
I come from the north of England, a place called Manchester, where they make all the curtain material and etc. And the boys were all born in London because I lived in London for 13 years. But we're all Australian citizens. We've got the certificates in the house, and the boys won't have it any other way. They're dinky-die Aussies, mate.
I wasn't arguing about that. What I'm saying is the dream of having boxing titles in the family came from the other side of the world.
Oh yes, it started when they were little babies, 5 years of age. I put the gloves on them in a bedroom, and they're moving around in the bedroom, and I started asking them questions, what do you want to be when you grow up? Boxers. What kind of boxers? Champions. And it all started there, the dream, and we've been dreaming ever since.
Some parents would say they wouldn't like their children involved in the so-called roughhouse sport of boxing.
Oh, when you say roughhouse, I don't think it's as rough as some sports. Take, for instance, football, rugby. I think they're very rough sports and can be very dangerous. And as I've always said, there's only 2 sports in which you get cauliflower ears. That's rugby and sleeping on wholesale mattresses.
Thank God I haven't got either.
Oh, well, plenty of time.
Plenty of time, yeah. How good are they, these boys?
I think they're very...
Unbiased now, sis.
Well, I think they're very good because of one very simple fact. They're totally dedicated. They only go out on a Friday night, these fellas. They're not like a lot of boxers who want to be going out every night. It's Friday night. They go out, they're in by midnight, and that is the only night that they go out, Lee. They train 2.5, 3 hours a day, then they work on the property, but they're just not interested in socialising because World Championships is the total aim.
Okay. Where are we at with them now? Go through them one at a time, from your eldest boy through the three, and tell us where they're at.
Well, Dean is virtually a novice. He's had 4 fights, and he's the heavyweight champion of Australia, the Pacific and the Orient, which I think has got to be a first. Guy, he's the state light heavyweight champion. He's only had 3 fights. His next one will be his 4th. And Troy, he's only had 6 fights, and his last fight was with one of the best fighters in the world, a fellow named In Chul Beck, a Korean, who's rated number 5 in the WBC and number 6 in the WBA. A man who's had 36 fights, Lee, and knocked out 35 opponents. My boy boxed the ears off him, and they called it a split decision. 3 Korean officials and 1 Australian official. What can you do?
It's the old story. You've got to knock them out to beat them on their home ground, haven't you?
Absolutely, Lee. You've got to knock them out.
It hasn't all been, shall I say, beer and skittles and success, though. I mean, the amateur side of things went sour a couple of years ago.
Very sour, Lee, because these boys were going great guns. They all won a state championship. Guy broke his hand in the state title, so he couldn't compete for a national title. But the other 2 boys, Dean and Troy, did compete for national titles, and they won them. Now, those national titles were declared Olympic trials, which simply meant if you win a national title, you're in the Olympic team. My boys were missed out.
One that was even measured for a coat, I believe.
Troy was measured for his Olympic uniform. Dean would have been measured for his a fortnight later, but it didn't come off because they just pulled the names completely off the list. And that was because I'd had a bit of a political argument with Arthur Tunstall, the amateur boxing chief. And as everybody knows, Arthur's the dictator of amateur boxing, and what he says goes, and you can't do anything about it, unfortunately.
So in the professional ranks now, all holding titles, and what is the future for young fellas like this in professional fighting? Have you got to get up to a world title to set yourself up for life, or do you just get the clippings to put in your scrapbook at the end of it all?
No, our aim is we're doing this because we do want world titles, and we do know that once you get up there, and you're in the world title frame, that's where the big money is. This is what these fellas want to do. They've given themselves about 5 years to stay in the professional ranks, then they're going to get out, hopefully as world champions, and they are not going to have 1 fight too many, that is for sure.
Following their win over Canterbury and Sydney last weekend, Newcastle United are just points outside the 5. So far this season they've maintained an unbeaten record away from home, but their record at Adamstown Oval is not so impressive. They haven't won a game there, and coach Peter Irving says it's disappointing the side hasn't shown local fans what they are capable of.
It's disappointing myself and it's disappointing the boys, I think. In front of your own supporters, we'd love to win, and we'll see if we can do it tomorrow.
Their opponents this week are bottom of the league into Monaro, who have posted good results in their last 2 games, and Irving says his side won't be taking this match lightly.
We're confident, but we're not going to. We won't take them too easy, even though they're bottom of the league. They've had a couple of good results in the last few weeks, so it'll be hard.
The side has played one player who is unlikely to play this weekend is one of Newcastle's favourite sons, Joe Senkowski. The reason?
Well, Joe just hasn't been playing well, and he's just not putting it in. And as I say, we have got skill in the side, but you've got to complement that with hard work. And I've got to have 11 men out there who are prepared to work hard for each other.
King Street dates back to before 1850. It's the original main street of Raymond Terrace, and during the days when the river traffic ruled, King Street was the hub of all commercial activity. And it continued to be so until the devastating 1955 flood. At that stage, the town's commercial centre shifted to William Street, and King Street suffered a decline in activity and attention. The meeting tonight, hosted by the Council's Town Planning Department, will reverse at least the decline in attention. The street has recently been rezoned to reflect the historical character of the area. The twin figs under which many of the town's early citizenry were married will be protected, The original stone paving is already being restored after lying many years under an asphalt cover, and the owners of the original buildings will be given financial assistance to maintain and restore the characteristic shop fronts and the overhanging verandas. Councillor Taylor today was confident that a sympathy of ideas between the King Street residents and the council would restore King Street to the historical importance it deserves in the area.
And the people that have been in the street or are in the street at the present time are certainly doing their bit to maintain the history of King Street. But council in future, any development that is going to be carried out in King Street will certainly carry the condition that the buildings must complement the conditions as they appeared to be on in that particular era, and to certainly blend in with the buildings that are here today that carry the history of King Street.
Early childhood specialists at the college have devised the program during the past 7 years. Once a week for a 2-month period each term, children as young as 2 years come together to explore the gymnasium, which is radically transformed for the occasion. Swings, an obstacle course, exercise mats, not to mention exhausted parents, are scattered around the rooms. And the children love it. The play gym program has been so successful that the Australian Gymnastics Federation is using it to train play gym leaders throughout the country. According to leader Judy Gecky, the program helps to develop coordination.
Children are left to their own devices to explore the environment, and we encourage them to move over all the equipment, and so it's just general basic movement and learning spatial awareness and body awareness.
What about the more advanced program?
Yes, we have a program for beginning gymnastics from 5 years up where they do learn skills.
Each year since 1984, the awards ceremony has swelled, and last night at Tattersalls Club there was an overflow crowd of 350 at least. PRAT is an acronym from Press, Radio, Advertising and Television, and local luminaries from all media branches were in abundance. Last November's BHP Steel International Surfing Competition and NBN's coverage of it featured prominently. They won Best Local Television Program and a special award from the Newcastle City Council. BHP's Newcastle General Manager, Bill Farrens, committed his company to sponsoring the event again this year, and NBN's Station Manager, James Mark Anthony, did likewise. Among the other major awards, Janelle Provost took out the Best TV Journalist. Best Media Personality was 2HD's talkback man, Warwick Teese, and the special award of the night went to recently retired sports commentator Rod Allen.
Sorry it took so long to get up here, but I am one of the older ones. A lot of people to thank for this.
Maria Dimitriglou followed her daughter to Australia from Greece in 1955. Today, many of her relatives and friends came to the place that has been her home for the last 6 years, Hamilton Nursing Home, to celebrate her 100th birthday with her. In typical Greek fashion, the food was plentiful and tempting, and the singing hearty. Maria's favourite food was obvious from the present she received from one relative, and wine, according to those who know her, is still Maria's favourite beverage. Maria has never learned to read or write and cannot speak English, but through her daughter, today she said she couldn't believe that all this fuss was just for her.
Hello, I'm Mark Warren. This new computer system installed by the Hunter District Water Board will increase the efficiency of water meter reading. The new system will replace the old notebook with this portable computer terminal.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
Wine Show is regarded as the best regional show of its type and is seen as a build-up to the national competitions later in the year. Entry to the show is restricted to winemakers in the Hunter Valley and the Mudgee region. Judging is divided into 30 classes, which covers most blends and varieties, and even makes provision for classic vintages, or wines of up to 30 years of age. Special categories are also set aside for wines from small winemakers. Chairman of the judging panel and Deputy Director General of the Department of Agriculture, Graham Gregory.
We don't have to give points, we just give them. It's been very good so far. You know, this is the first day and we've only been looking at the 1986 wines, and we're very, very happy with the quality, particularly in the white wines. We haven't done the reds yet. It's first day, we haven't looked at any reds, but the whites of the 86 vintage are looking really good, yeah.
Now, how do you go about judging the wine?
Oh, well, you know, the three basic things you look at is colour and condition, to see that the wine has a good colour and it's not cloudy. Secondly, you smell it, the bouquet, you appraise it on the bouquet and then taste it on the palate.
Are you happy with the support from the winemakers this year?
Oh yes, it's good. I think the entries this year are just marginally down on last year, but there's still almost 800 entries. And, you know, this is a very big entry for a regional wine show. This is the biggest regional wine show in the whole of Australia, and gets very, very strong support.
A member of the task force, Kathy Sharp, says that in its 8 years of operation, the task force has responded to the needs of the unemployed with practical initiatives. Who's Under That Hard Hat, a Girls in Trade program, and surveys on the unemployed in the Hunter region are two of their major achievements. Kathy says the proposal to have those who receive the dole undertake community work not only hits an emotional chord in the community, but it clouds the real issues at the heart of unemployment.
The real problem is there aren't enough jobs. There are just so many more people looking for work than there are physically jobs available. And it's not so much putting the onus on the individual, the victim, to create a job for themselves or whatever, or to do something about it. It's up to the employers and the economy and the government to find jobs for these people. That's what's needed.
A Newcastle Community Task Force survey taken 9 months ago found 50% of the unemployed in this region had been out of work for more than 6 months. Nearly a quarter of those surveyed had been unemployed for more than 2 years. One aspect of the Prime Minister's address to the nation, which the task force does support, is the call to buy Australian. This, Kathy says, is the real solution to the unemployment crisis.
I think what has to be done is some of the things Mr Hawke mentioned the other night. A balance of payments has to be adjusted. We have to buy more in Australia, we have to invest more in Australia, and in the Hunter we have to do that locally. Manufacturers have to ensure that goods that they normally would import, to see if they can make them or buy them in the Hunter and in Australia. That creates jobs.